Welcome into the LSU Sports Insider Podcast. I'm Zach Ewing, live from Tiger Stadium, and LSU has defeated Florida 20-10 tonight to improve to 3-0 on the season. The Tigers emerge victorious. They chose victory tonight. You might say they picked victory tonight. You might say they picked it 5 times if you were DJ Lagway. LSU has 5 interceptions tonight. That's one for every finger on your hand. And that leads them almost directly to this 20-10 victory. We will talk about it on this LSU show. I will be joined shortly by some of our writers who are interviewing the LSU Tigers players and coaches right now. And they're going to come out, stop by on their way back up to the press box and chat about what they heard and what they thought about tonight's game. I know Reed Darcy for sure will be stopping by. We'll see if we can get Wilson Alexander, maybe Koki Riley or Scott Rabelais to stop by. But they are, of course, writing for The Advocate on deadline. So that will take priority over this show where I can just sit and talk and I can take your comments and your questions. And we will go through this together. So leave your comments and questions. Patrick is producing for us tonight, and he just said Brian Kelly has had a very intense post-game presser. Obviously, I haven't seen it. It's going on about 100 feet that way under the stands in front of me, and I don't know what all that is about, but that's interesting. He had an intense post-game presser last week when LSU beat Louisiana Tech, but obviously did not play very well on offense. They didn't play all that well on offense tonight either. I thought they started to show some signs of life late in the game. You got some big plays there at the end. They got into the red zone a couple times, including at the end of the game where they just took knees instead of scoring again. But earlier, they went backward kind of with penalties and with a really bad Garrett Nussmeier interception. And so, this offense is still just choppy. Just can't seem to quite get it together. They did go over 300 yards of offense with the late Caden Durham 51-yard run to get them down inside the Florida 10 there at the end of the game. But before that, they just kind of just doing enough. They had one nice touchdown drive that ended with the touchdown pass to Xavier Thomas in the first half. That gave them a 10-3 lead. Florida answered, made it 10-10. Looked like we might have a really fun game on our hands. Florida was driving possibly for the go-ahead field goal at the end of the half, and DJ Lagway threw interception number 2, and that directly led to Damian Ramos hitting a field goal as the first half clock expired and made it 13-10 LSU at halftime instead of 13-10 Florida. So that's 3 points directly from DJ Lagway interceptions. His third INT was clearly the most damaging of the night to Sean Spears. His second, he had the first pick. He gets the third one as well in the third quarter, and he took that back 58 yards for a touchdown to make it 20-10. There was still like 22 minutes left in this game at that point, 23 minutes left in this game, and there was no more scoring. Both teams kind of threatened. I mentioned the Nussmeier interception, and of course, DJ Lagway had 2 more picks of his own, including one in the end zone. That was, I believe, his 4th interception. That was by DeMarcus Cooley, if I'm keeping this straight in my head. A.J. Halsey had the second one. Sean Spears had numbers 1 and 3. DeMarcus Cooley had the one in the end zone, the 4th interception. And then the freshman DJ Pickett gets pick number 5. And that one was really just kind of a desperation throw by Lagway. Terrible throw, but also at that point, you're down by 10 points with 2 minutes left. He was under pressure. And that one, you kind of understand he's just throwing that one up and hoping something happens. And DJ Lagway made like 2 or 3 incredible throws tonight too. His touchdown pass right here in the corner of this end zone was a beautiful pass. He made another touch pass on like a 2nd and 18 that was beautiful. And then he would follow it up with just a throw where if you're a Florida fan, you just got to be like gator chomping your own head over what DJ Lagway is doing out there. So the gist of the Brian Kelly press conference, he was annoyed by questions and accused at least one media member of being spoiled. You guys spoiled at LSU? Are we? Maybe a little. This program has had, obviously more success than a lot, and the expectations are certainly very high. But I also think even with all the fits and starts and some of the things that need to improve, particularly on the offensive side of the ball, I mean, if I had, what is today, September 13th? If I had asked every single person watching this stream right now on August the 13th or July the 13th or June the 13th and said, hey, would you take it if LSU was 3-0 with 3, victories where you're taking knees at the end of the game? I don't think anyone would. That's almost too good to be true, right? And then you throw in the fact that, by the way, Garrett Nussmeier has not played up to his potential yet. The running game is still an issue. All of these things, and you're still 3-0 with 3 kneel down victory formations at the end of the game. So, first world problems, right? Like LSU, and I do understand that from Brian Kelly. It's like you're 3-0, you're going to be 4-0. Play Southeastern next Saturday night here at Tiger Stadium, and then the meat of the schedule comes in. Trip to Ole Miss, home game, I believe. The following home game is against South Carolina, which is interesting. Now, Lenora Sellers goes out with a concussion. Looked like a pretty bad concussion tonight. South Carolina got waxed by Vanderbilt at home. So that game, it's 3 weeks from now. You hope Lenora Sellers is certainly by then able to go again. But South Carolina was losing that game when he was in there. They just don't look quite as impressive as the little number next to their name. I think they're number 11 in the country, and I never really bought that myself to begin with, and then certainly not after tonight. So, South Carolina, and then it just it goes from there. The games against Texas A&M, the road trip to Alabama, road trip to Oklahoma at the end of the year, the road trip to Vanderbilt. I mean, look, you said South Carolina was a tougher game than Vanderbilt at the beginning of the year. It may not be anymore. The trip to Vanderbilt may be tricky. So there's some games out there that LSU is going to have to get a lot more prepared for, especially on the offensive side of the ball. But having said all of that, you're telling me this team's 3-0 with a win at Clemson, with a win here against a, sort of wounded Florida team that came in maybe with its season on the line, maybe with its coach's job on the line. We'll see what happens with Billy Napier, but this was certainly like desperate times call for desperate measures for Florida, and the Gators came out playing really well. I do want to say that, like, they came out, took a 3-0 lead, got a field goal on their first drive after forcing an LSU 3-and-out to start the game, then forced another punt, and then they looked like they were moving the ball again, and they got past midfield, and you're going, boy, Florida may just really put a stranglehold on this game early, and LSU answered with its defense. They had an interception of Lagway early that kind of stemmed the bleeding, kept it at 3-0. They get a field goal, it's 3-3. Then they go ahead, it's 10-3, and all of a sudden it's LSU that's ahead. They really kind of stopped that real early Florida onslaught before it was even able to begin. One quick note on an out-of-town score. Those of you watching this may have that on in the background, or maybe we're on in the background, but Texas A&M just scored with 13 seconds left to take the lead on Notre Dame, maybe beat Notre Dame. 41-40 the score there after the extra point with 13 seconds left. So pretty exciting stuff there. We'll go over some other scores. Of course, Georgia had the big overtime victory over Tennessee. And Wilson Alexander's here.
Zach, I can only stop by for a second because Brian Kelly just went absolutely off on a question about criticizing LSU's offense. It was the first question of his press conference. So I think in some ways justifiably so, because they won
a big game and
had 5 interceptions. But he did not want to hear it, saying that LSU's, gosh, I need to go back and get all of the quotes. We're going to get this posted up so people could see what he had to say. He was livid, went off on a reporter who started the press conference that way. It was unlike anything I'd ever seen around here. Kelly's had some outbursts, but this was different.
That's fascinating. I mean, obviously, LSU's 3-0, and anyone should have taken that before the season, but the natives are still a little restless.
I mean, you haven't scored more than 20. You haven't even scored more than 23 points in a game yet.
Yeah.
You only scored 20 tonight, and 7 of those were a defensive touchdown. This is a place that has come to expect better offensively, and you would think that you would be better offensively with Garrett Nussmeier back and some of the pieces you have at the skill positions. The offensive line, even in your 2 biggest games, hasn't been susceptible to giving up sacks. But this team just cannot get things going on the offensive side, and so that's creating some angst because when you get into some of your big games this year, you're going to be able to do what you need to do offensively to win the game. They haven't shown that yet, but gosh, Brian Kelly did not want to hear that, especially right after the win. And again, in some ways, I don't totally blame him. I think it's probably better for the Monday press conference. So when that opened up, he took an opportunity to go off. It was. I wish I had all the quotes written down.
Yeah, that's fascinating. We know you've got to go. You got a story to write for the paper, but just a quick word on the defense. 5 interceptions, just unbelievable.
They were fantastic tonight. Kelly talked about how they were often bringing pressure. That's the Blake Baker identity, and it was getting DJ Lagway out of rhythm. Those throws, those interceptions, and most of them were. I mean, I think about the one to Tamarcus Cooley. That's just overthrowing a ball down the middle of the field and LSU running underneath it. He threw in the coverage on Deshaun Spears' first interception. I mean, LSU was just in the path of the ball all night long. 5 interceptions, the first time they've done that since 2020 against Ole Miss, and it was obviously the story of the game. They were fantastic in the back end. This is an LSU defense that we've been wanting to see something like this in the secondary for a few years. They stepped up in a really big way.
Yeah, I mean, and this week we'll just talk about it, but with Southeastern next week, LSU has really passed the first third of the season, and now they can go into the meat of the schedule.
We were concerned coming into the year thinking, oh, man, if Clemson meets the hype and if Florida improves after the way it ended last season and DJ Lagway is kind of superhuman like he showed like he might be able to be at times, what if LSU starts 1-2? Not the case at all. You're 3-0. You get one more tune-up before you go to Ole Miss, and you are in a good position here. You've got to be able to get better offensively because you need to be a little bit more complimentary. But you got a defense that can probably take you a long way and keep you in a lot of games. And I would say that if you're an LSU fan sitting here tonight, you should feel like, okay, like you said, you passed the first 3 games. There's a lot to work on the offensive side, but you still have some reasons to feel good about this team moving forward.
All right, he's Wilson Alexander, the Advocates lead LSU football beat writer.
I'm going to go and write this up so that people can read Brian Kelly's outburst and tirade.
Smoke coming from those fingertips. All right. Thanks, Wilson. And we'll continue here on the LSU Insider post-game show. That's really interesting that Brian Kelly's back to his table slamming ways and those sorts of things after a huge win. And I tend to I'm with Wilson. I agree with a little bit of annoyance at. I think it's totally fair to question the offense. Don't get me wrong. The first question, after you knocked off a conference rival by 10 points at home and improved to 3-0 and you're number 3 in the country, the first question is, why isn't the offense fixed? I think it's fair to question. I do think there's a little bit of like, really? We're not going to be positive about this in any way, shape, or form. So I do understand that a little bit with Brian Kelly. So super interesting stuff. Again, we will get Reed Darcy for sure said he will stop by. I'm not sure. Koki, Riley, and Scott Rabelais are our other writers here, but they are also on deadline, so they may not be able to stop by. But we'll keep rolling. I will say this. I think that if you had to choose one side of the ball to be struggling early in the season, you would pick the offense as an LSU fan. And the reason I say that is because I think there's some faith that the offense gets fixed. Like, you've got a Heisman candidate at quarterback. You've got some skill position weapons. The O-line, look, was always going to be a little bit of a question mark, but this offensive staff, Joe Sloan, Brian Kelly, they've shown they can coach offense. They've shown that they can come up with big plays. Garrett Nussmeier has shown that he can make big plays. Like, I think you have more faith that unit will get fixed than you would if the roles were reversed and this was like 2023 again, and LSU is just losing game, or say winning games 41-35 every week because the defense just looks lost. Like, if that were the case, I think that you would be afraid, boy, I don't know. This is the second time in 3 years it's been like this. Even in 2024, the defense wasn't great. So now are we like, just to the point where we don't think Blake Baker is the answer, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, this is of course a hypothetical, but you are just to the point where I think you'd much rather have the offense be the one that has question marks and needs to be worked on. Like, I think the offense is going to be fine. Now, I kind of thought they would start to show some improvement by now. The Clemson game, again, you scratch out a little bit. Clemson's got a very good defense, even though they did lose today, and that win has been counterfeited a little bit now that Georgia Tech also has defeated Clemson, and those Tigers are 1-2 and kind of struggling to stay relevant. So that's one bit of bad news for LSU today is that was the win that catapulted you into the top 5. And that was because everyone thought Clemson was a top 5 team. Well, Clemson doesn't look like a top 5 team. They lost LSU. They lost to Georgia Tech today. They struggled mightily against Troy last week. So if Clemson's not anywhere near a top 5 team, and Florida, which lost to South Florida last week, and then South Florida gets blitzed by Miami tonight, like maybe Florida's not any good. And if LSU is just sort of, again, I'm not saying they're squeaking by these games. They're taking knees at the end of them, but they're not dominating these teams either. Florida, I have to double check this. I believe they outgained LSU tonight. I know they had, at least before the Caden Durham 51-yard run at the end of the game there. It's possible that evened it up. I am going to check on that real quick. But yeah, you're not dominating these games. You're just sort of getting by. And what if the competition is not as good as we thought? And Florida did outgain LSU 366 to 316 tonight. Comment out there, Chicago Cheetah says, I really love LSU's defense. That's something that I think we can always hang our hats on. That's absolutely true. And yeah, that's the good news. And Reed Darcy's here. He is going to pick up the mic fresh out of a very interesting LSU interview session.
Did you hear about it?
Yeah, Wilson stopped by real quick to tell us what happened.
Yeah, so that was really interesting by Brian Kelly. I've never really seen him like that. First question was about the offense, and he pushed back on that pretty strongly. So I don't know what Wilson said, but it was like Brian Kelly, like we've never seen him before. Pretty animated.
Did we get like a dadgummit or a table slam or a?
No. He didn't slam the table, but he clearly didn't want to talk about the offense. He wanted to highlight the bright spots of this game, which was the LSU defense and special teams, but he didn't want to talk about how the offense struggled. And he tried to make a point that, hey, they won the game, they did what they needed to win, and they came away with 20 points. And with the way the defense played tonight, you're not going to need a whole lot from your offense to win these kinds of games. But at the end of the day, if you're going to compete for a championship like they want to compete, and if you're going to, try to make a spot in the playoff and try to make a run from there, you're going to need some sharper offense than what we saw tonight and last week against La Tech.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was just saying before you came on, though, I think if you were an LSU fan or someone trying to handicap LSU's chances at making a college football playoff run, I think that this is actually, of course, you'd like to be beating every team by 30 points, but having the offense be the unit that looks like it needs fine-tuning and some major adjustments and things like that, I have more confidence that they'll figure it out than I would if the situation were reversed and it was the defense.
Yeah, because you can look at some things and like, okay, there's clearly tons of talent on this team, especially in the receiver room, especially in the tight end room, especially at quarterback with Garrett Nussmeier. And we know what Garrett Nussmeier is. We know he's one of the best quarterbacks in the country. So you can see the pieces there in place to have a productive offense. We're a little concerned about the offensive line and the run game. We're not sure exactly how or if LSU can get better in that. But the passing game just needs to be better. The passing game was not in sync at all tonight.
Yeah.
Garrett Nussmeier was not super sharp last week. He wasn't super sharp tonight. It kind of, I have to look back at the game and try to watch it again to see exactly what went wrong. But I think just, if this is not 2 years ago when the LSU defense was just helpless and, holding on for dear life as teams ran up and down the field against them, that those LSU defenses didn't have enough talent to compete in the SEC. This LSU offense, without a doubt, has the talent to compete in the SEC. So I guess that gives you some hope that their issues are kind of fixable.
Yeah, you're talking about Nussmeier and this cadre of weapons that they've brought in the transfer portal. Like, what's going on? I mean, and the O-line was a question mark, and I think that's part of it. I think there is a little bit of, especially in the run game, a little bit of concern on the O-line. But you're right, the rhythm just doesn't seem to be there. Nussmeier, I don't think is playing even, at 75% of his potential right now.
No, last week he was inaccurate on a bunch of passes. This week, I wasn't watching too closely, but there were a couple passes that that he would love to have back. The interception was pretty terrible. It was inexcusable, and Brian Kelly said that after the game, like, Nuss knows he can't make that throw. Throw across the body.
Yeah. In a spot where LSU could have put the game away.
Exactly. That's a mistake you can excuse from a first-year starter, maybe even a second-year starter, younger player. Nuss is a fifth-year senior. He can't be making that throw, and I think he'll learn from it. But it's just 2 weeks now where he hasn't been at his best. So if you project forward and you say, okay, if LSU figures out a way to get him at his best, then that will solve quite a bit of these problems that we've seen.
Now, LSU is still 3-0, and they still have two of the better wins in the country. Clemson counterfeit a little bit, lost to Georgia Tech today. Maybe that's not it's certainly not as great of a win as we all thought, but it's still maybe a good win. And then this one over Florida. And that is because of the defense. You know that Kobe GIF where he's like,
Yes.
5 picks tonight.
Yeah.
5 picks.
Last year, I don't know if you mentioned this before. Last year they had 6. Tonight they had 5.
Yeah, I
remember the preseason podcast we did with the over-unders. We were looking at, I think you said it at 9.5 on
9.5 or
interceptions?
10.5. Yeah, it was somewhere right around
Right
there.
now they're already at 6, so I think they'll probably hit that threshold. And we were going back and forth like, oh, are they going to hit it? They're going to not. Well, they had 5. They had half of that just tonight alone. A lot of that, I think, just DJ Lagway was really, really struggling. Some of those throws he made were kind of inexplicable. I don't know.
Yeah, DJ Lagway's got a little like Jameis Winston in him where he made a couple of unbelievable throws tonight. The touchdown pass was just feathery, perfect right into his receiver's hands. He had like a 2nd and 18 pass that was the same way for a big gain.
Yep.
And it almost seems like he falls in love with the idea of doing that. I know for sure on Deshaun Spears' first pick, I felt like that he was trying to fit the ball into way too tight of a window. And then some of the other ones are just, at that point, he's pressing, starting to chase the game. I mean, it had been talked about this week. This was his first SEC road game, and it happens to be at night in Death Valley. I mean, I think he got rattled a little bit.
Yeah, I thought the last 2 were an example of him trying to do a little too much when the score got out of hand. The one of him over the middle, the receiver was down the seam, but he just lofted it in there. It was a very soft throw that, Tamarcus Cooley had no trouble rotating in and picking off. And the last one, that was a desperation, kind of tossed it to the sideline. It looked like he was trying to throw it out of bounds, maybe throw it away, but he was just off his back foot. He didn't get enough power on it. So I think those 2 were probably just a last-ditch effort to try to make something happen. But the other ones, he tried to force it. He also missed. I forget who it was. Which one was it? I think it was Spears' 2nd interception when he had the pick 6. He just didn't see Deshaun Spears.
No.
He's thrown over the middle. Didn't see him there. It happens to quarterbacks, but the mistakes clearly compounded them in DJ Lagway tonight, and that's something that sometimes it can happen for a young quarterback, especially when you're on the road in an environment like this.
Saw Scott Woodward just walk right behind us. He looks very comfortable. LSU's 3-0. They're almost certainly going to be 4-0 after next week. They get into the meat of the schedule. Seeing Scott Woodward reminds me, though, of athletic directors, and now they've got a decision to make at Florida. What do you think Billy Napier's fate is here?
Well, how many games are they going to win the rest of the schedule?
Their schedule is
They've got Miami next week.
Absolutely brutal.
And what makes their schedule so tough is the out-of-conference games. You've got Miami and Florida State.
Yep.
Those 2 top 10 teams.
You already lost to South Florida.
Your schedule is already so difficult with the 8 SEC games, and then you're adding 2 top 10 teams out of conference plus South Florida, who's got a shot at the playoff this year. So I feel sorry for Billy Napier. The schedule's tough. At Florida last week they had a lot of penalties. Tonight they had a lot of penalties. It doesn't seem like that program is in a very good place, and it does feel like his time at Florida is coming to an end, which is a shame because I think we all think that he's a good coach, but at the same time, it's just it's so tough when you lose games like this, and then you've got that tough schedule ahead.
Yeah, I mean they all SEC schedules are tough. I mean, I really don't think there's a bad team in the league this year. Maybe Kentucky, maybe South Carolina after that. I don't know, but Florida's especially got to play Oklahoma, Texas, Georgia, Tennessee,
A&M,
Texas A&M. Already played LSU. I think they get Mississippi State
and Kentucky.
So they'll have a couple of games, but that's just not enough at a place like Florida where you're looking at 4-8, 5-7,
especially when you're in year 4. For Billy Napier, you're in year 4. And now last year, we kind of counted him out, maybe even before the season started, and then he turned it around. So maybe it's possible they turn it around this year. You got to give them the benefit of the doubt, but man, it will be difficult with the schedule they've got coming up.
Yeah, but that game against Miami will be fascinating because Miami's riding high. Interesting as we can go around the SEC a little bit. Just heart-stopping victory for Georgia in Knoxville at Neyland Stadium. Somehow get the touchdown and 2-point conversion to tie it. Somehow get the field goal miss to get to overtime and then win it in overtime. So Georgia, that's just a heartbreaker for Tennessee. Texas A&M, the other end of the extreme. I don't know if you even know this.
I don't know who won that game, so you're breaking the news to me right now.
So it was tied 34-34. Notre Dame, when I left the press box, Notre Dame is just running the ball down A&M's throat. Had a first down at like the 11 with 2.5 minutes left. Yeah. They're going to run the clock out and kick a field goal. Well, Notre Dame scores with less than 2 minutes to go.
Yeah.
I was just looking at the play-by-play. Y'all probably know more than we do. They went for 2. I don't know if it was a botched extra point or what. They didn't get it. And then A&M goes down and scores and wins the game with 13 seconds left, 41-40. So
a huge win for A&M and a huge win for the SEC.
And Notre Dame now 0-2.
Yep.
Like their schedule gets much easier. They could run the table, and 10-2 probably gets them in, but anything less than that, and they're not getting in.
They need to win 10 wins.
Yeah.
They need to get 10 wins to get in, especially as an independent, for sure. They don't have the path of winning a conference championship to punch
right.
automatic.
And I would say they probably don't even control their own destiny at this point. 10 wins could get you in, but you need the right situation for that to get you in too.
A&M too, they got the pieces there. The defense under Mike Elko is, they got a lot of players back, and I don't know how Marcel Reed played tonight. I saw he got injured quite a bit, a little bit, missed some time. But if he really takes that next step, then their ceiling is a lot higher than it would have been if he hadn't. So
I raised this point earlier because Vandy beats South Carolina by 35-7, 38-7 or something in Columbia. Now, I know Lenora Sellers was hurt for certainly the entire second half. He left with a concussion, I think, late in the first half.
But Vandy had control of that.
Vandy was already winning that game.
Okay.
Is at Vandy a tougher game for LSU than home against South Carolina?
Ooh, that's a really tough question. Maybe.
I think on the road,
yeah,
I think it is.
On the road, that's not a very difficult place to play Vanderbilt, but, the Vanderbilt's a good team, man. They blew out Virginia Tech. They look better against Virginia Tech than South Carolina looked against Virginia Tech, for what it's worth. And they've got a good quarterback who's back. Diego Pavia is a good quarterback. So it's like, maybe. I don't know. But, it all depends on how healthy is Lenora Sellers when South Carolina comes here. It seems like he'll be back by then, but you never know. So we'll see.
Yeah. That's in 3 weeks, I believe. Or maybe it's even 4 weeks.
Ole Miss, and then South Carolina.
Is there a bye before South Carolina? I have trouble remembering now that there's 2 byes when the bye weeks are. There might be a bye, and there might be 4 weeks. So, yeah. But like, I think if you had to rank LSU's remaining games, at Southeastern – we got the mower here. Got to keep the grass cut. So I hope you can hear us as they cut the grass. But if you have to rank LSU's remaining games, like obviously Southeastern, Western Kentucky are at the bottom, but South Carolina at home is starting to look like it. Maybe Arkansas at home, South Carolina at home might be the two next easiest on the schedule.
Yeah, going to Alabama is still going to be really tough. Going to Oklahoma the last week of the regular season. Is that the toughest game left on this schedule the way it looks right now?
Still going to go Tuscaloosa. I'll go Norman second.
Yeah. But either way, to me, it's kind of a toss-up. Alabama looked good today against Wisconsin. Oklahoma, I forget who they played this week.
They played Temple.
Yeah.
At Temple.
And
took care of that. Yeah.
I'm not sure why they went to Temple. But yeah, I think that game in Norman, the last week of the regular season, I said this before the season, that game's going to be massive.
It's going to be cold up there. Yeah. Good atmosphere.
Really tough for LSU to win. Say they pick up a loss or two in the next few weeks. You can't afford to lose that game because you're going to be right on the bubble of a playoff.
And the way Oklahoma's playing, could there be an SEC championship spot on the line? There could be a lot on the line Thanksgiving weekend in Norman. All right, let's drill down on this one just a little bit more before we get going. It's funny, like a lot of times you say, well, how much did a team actually dominate a game? And the number you can look at is first downs. Florida had 23 first downs. LSU only had 10.
Man.
That's one of the stats you look at and you go, boy, I think like LSU, I'll say this, LSU controlled the explosive plays in this game. And not just on defense. The 5 picks are the obvious. You won by 10 points. You got a pick 6 and you got a pick right before halftime that directly led to a field goal. That's 10 points right there. But they also had more big plays on offense.
Did you see the time of possession? Florida had 37 minutes, round up to 38. LSU only had 22 minutes time of possession. So that LSU scored quickly. It didn't need these. It couldn't, in fact, sustain long drives to chew up clock, and get into the end zone. It's when it scored pretty quickly. So Florida, they had the ball and they had chances to score. And the main thing that I'll remember from this game is that LSU gave Florida opportunities to cut into the lead and make the game interesting late in the fourth quarter, but DJ Lagway gave those chances away, and then LSU won. So
if he's even able to lead one scoring drive there, this becomes a much different game. The pick in the end zone by TaMarcus Cooley, probably the biggest one of all. And then by the time DJ Pickett Florida probably was not coming back at that point anyway. Unless you had bet on the game, there was no drama left in that point. But it was. Here comes the mower again, but it was. It was right on the edge of becoming dramatic, and it just never quite got there.
Yeah, it felt like it could for a second there, but but it never did. The other thing I wanted to point out, LSU had 2 trips into the red zone, scored on neither of them. The drive that really encapsulates that was they had the big play to Bauer Sharp. I believe it went for 65 yards. That got them down to the 16. And then I was looking down when
penalty went backward, I think.
No, it was a botched.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
Fumble. They lose 17 yards.
Jawan Jennings. Yeah.
Yeah, Juwan Johnson. And then
thank you.
And then Nuss throws the interception when he just rolling out of the pocket, throws across his body. There was a holding call on the play. Everybody saw it, knew that it was going to come back anyway. He has this, ill-advised throw and it's an interception. So that drive is to me what encapsulates the problems with the offense. They're just not in sync.
Jawan Jennings will be tomorrow. 49ers in town to face the Saints.
I will be
Johnson.
There. I will be in the stands for that game.
Norman Bell just walked by, our producer for the Saints Insider postgame show. And the other empty red zone possession, of course, was at the end of the game. They're just taking knees, so that one you kind of don't count. But maybe we should have brought it to Brian Kelly. Why were you only 1 of 3 in the red zone? And find out what he had to say about that.
You would have targeted his wrath,
throwing a microphone at us.
Toward us. Should we talk about the Whit Weeks targeting?
Oh yes, I'm glad you brought that up. We haven't done that. No, haven't. And then West Weeks leaves the game with an injury in the second half as well.
Kelly said it was a calf injury for West Weeks. He said it wasn't serious, so it doesn't seem like it's going to put him out for too long. But it looked kind of bad. It was kind of a non-contact deal. He looks pretty distraught on the sideline. But Brian Kelly said it's just a calf injury, not serious. So they'll see exactly what it is, I guess, tomorrow.
No, but in calf injuries, I will say, how many times have you seen a calf injury? Guy tries to come back too early, and then it's an Achilles because everything's connected down there. Yeah. I don't think West Weeks is going to play next week. If I'm Brian Kelly, I'm not playing him next week.
Probably not.
And now Whit Weeks will play next week because he was ejected for targeting in the first half. It was Florida's 3rd offensive play of the night. Our initial reaction in the press box was, this is soft. They should just go play flag football. The ball carrier dropped his head right when Whit Weeks got in there. But upon replay, I think it's the right call. Whit Weeks lowered his head. What did you think?
It's the right. Yeah, it was absolutely the right call. The letter of it, but I personally have an issue with how the league rules are. How what they constitute targeting. I just have an issue with that. I think the spirit of the rule is that it's to get these malicious, reckless hits out of the game to protect players. And that's awesome. I'm all in favor of that, but I don't like, I don't like penalizing players and kicking them out of the game for these routine tackles that happen to have a little helmet to helmet contact. I just don't think, you should kick players out of the game for that. I was talking to Rab at halftime, and I was saying, it should be like basketball. Basketball has the flagrant 1 and the flagrant 2. Maybe college football should have a targeting 1 and a targeting 2.
That's not bad.
A targeting 1 for the routine tackles where there's helmet-to-helmet contact and a player lowers the crown of his helmet. That can be a 15-yard penalty, but the player gets to stay in the game. And then a targeting 2 call for the malicious, the reckless hits that are just, needlessly violent and put, players in danger. So it's just like we're painting with too broad of a brush here.
I agree. It's in the word targeting. Was he actually targeting the ball carrier? I don't think so. I mean, obviously he's trying to tackle him, but he's not trying to spear him or anything.
No.
I agree with you, and you could do it like they do with flagrant fouls in basketball or like yellow card, red card in soccer.
Yeah.
If you do it twice, then you get kicked out.
For these defenders, for players like Whit Weeks, they're trying to get a moving target. Like the Florida receiver in this instant, he lowered his head too, and he as he was trying to brace for the hit, he lowered himself down, so he moved the strike zone on Whit Weeks. And in a split second, it's hard to and make a decision like that. So
I feel targeted by this lawnmower. I'm breathing in exhaust and stuff. It's terrible. Anyway, running game 96 yards rushing for LSU, but there's some lipstick on a pig with that 51-yard run at the end. Again, not that doesn't count when you're trying to put a game away. You bust a big run, that's a good thing. But the down to down,
the whole season, it's been feast or famine for the LSU running game. These long chunk explosive plays are great, but it's either been that or 1 or 2 yard gains or losses. There's no methodical, efficient 4 or 5 yards control a game like that. Everything's difficult. Yeah, they've broken out a few long ones, but down to down, it's not consistent.
All right, we're going to wrap things up. Reed, Darcy, what is your top takeaway from this evening or from today in the SEC?
In the SEC?
Well, LSU, SEC, your dealer's choice.
From the LSU side, the defense is legit. The defense is back. DJ Lagway didn't have a great game, but I think LSU did a lot of things to force him into those bad throws that became interceptions. So, the defense proved itself tonight that it's back. And, LSU spent the last 2 years trying to rebuild that defense. And last year they got the coach and the coaching staff. And this year they got him the players that he needed to execute the kind of system he wanted to run. So I think this defense is totally legit. It's a defense that's capable of bringing LSU to the playoff and then potentially to a national title. The offense just needs to be more consistent, more reliable. It doesn't have to be 2023's offense. It just has to be a little more consistent, a little more efficient. And I think this team could be something pretty special. But until then, I'll reserve judgment and try to see exactly how the offense fares against some of their tougher opponents going forward.
Yeah, and I'm gonna broaden that a little bit. King Lion Crown had a comment a few minutes ago. I definitely believe LSU is a contender. Our problems are fixable. And that's kind of my broad view here is that, look around the SEC. Who's the best team in the SEC right now? I don't know. I don't know what the answer to that question is.
Yeah.
Georgia went to Knoxville and won. I think you probably have to put them as the number one contender based on what they've done the last, 10 years combined with having that road win at Tennessee. But LSU is right there with anybody else.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good teams.
Oklahoma's up there.
Texas, I think, will be up there. They're not up there right now.
Tennessee is up there.
Tennessee, Alabama may get back there.
Yeah.
But I Texas A&M after winning at Notre Dame tonight. With any of those teams, like LSU, it feels like you just tweak things on offense a little bit, and LSU should be right there with
It's open. It's open. The race to the SEC title game is wide open. There's about maybe 7 teams, I think, that have a shot to get in that game. And so that's different from what it's been in years past. It's not just 1 or 2 teams that are head and shoulders above the rest of the pack. It's a solid group of teams that are right at the top. And so I think that'll make for a pretty exciting stretch run of the season.
All right, well, LSU holds serve at home tonight, 20-10 over the Florida Gators. This has been the LSU Insider postgame show. Join us every week, twice a week, for the LSU Insider podcast. We're coming your way Monday to wrap this one up a little bit further and, talk about some things we see upon rewatching this game and all of that good stuff. For tonight, Patrick McGee produced for us. Wilson Alexander stopped by briefly to talk some Brian Kelly histronics, and Reed Darcy was here as well. I'm Zach Ewing, and we will see you next time.